Hello, planet. It's Jeff Myers here. It's 755 Mimosa Boulevard in beautiful Roswell, Georgia. Looking forward to a great conversation with Reverend Mary Cox this morning. I guess it's not, we got about 2.5 minutes of this morning left. Then it'll be good afternoon. So hopefully we'll have some folks viewing the live stream. All right. Got some folks tuning in here. Got some great questions. We're going to really look forward to catching up with Mary. I know I've heard she's been very busy. People think retirement, it's time to slow down. Well, not the case with Mary Cox. So we're going to have a real fun time hearing about her, what her husband Bill have been up to. This has been kind of a wild time to retire in the COVID, retire and just be locked in at home. So I know she's been very busy, also still involved with missions. It's going to be great to hear all about that. Hopefully, we see the UPS truck going behind me. We're in my office actually, um, here at the church. Hopefully, Mary will tune in. If you have questions you want me to ask Mary, feel free to put them in the comments section, and I will ask them as we kind of continue our conversation. Let me see if she's on here. I do not see her. Yeah, I'm just sitting here trying to avoid writing a sermon. In fact, in case you're wondering how the sermon prep is going, we've got about 16 words, so not great. Before you assign yourself passages in Revelation to do, you probably should think long and hard about that because it's not easy. Oh, but it's fun to see how God will work in mysterious ways. Okay, hopefully we have Mary coming on here. We got for our noon conversation as we close the distance. Also, if you have folks that you would like us to have a conversation with for closing the distance, let me know. Send me an email at jeff@roswellpress.org. We're looking to expand the conversation from not just former pastors or the clergy here at RPC. But we're going to talk to some authors. We're going to talk to some theologians, pastors. We're going to talk to some campus ministers. We're looking to really kind of expand folks that we can kind of learn from, hear how they're doing ministry in the virtual COVID environment. Oh, here we go. All right. On. All right. Hopefully she's got good bandwidth so we can get a good picture. Let's see her here. All right. It says we're adding her. This takes a couple seconds, but it's like I was saying, let me know if you have questions you want me to ask. And if you, oh, Mary.
Hello.
So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Can you hear me okay?
I was determined not to be that person. It happened, right?
No, this is great. You're perfect. Well, Brad last week, it took us 10 minutes.
I know.
And so
I know.
people got 10 minutes of me talking to to myself, which is abundantly awkward.
It's A-okay. It's all right. And here we are. Good job. Looks like a pretty day right there behind you.
Yeah, it's beautiful out. I just went for a walk, got some coffee. I'm ready to go.
Oh boy.
How have you been?
Great. Just doing, considering all things,
right.
Doing really, really well. We're all good. I have to tell you that this past week I had a really fun call. This kind of relates to barbershop, as most things do, right? But I got a call from Bruce Graham, That was really fun to
Oh,
see
fun.
him see him calling, and he's working part-time at the chapel of Big Canoe. I mean, probably most people knew that, but me. But he wanted our group to come and sing outside, distanced, for a mission conference. So how fun is
Oh,
that?
that's going to be beautiful. I officiated a wedding up there a few years ago, and
That's right.
it's a really fantastic area. That's going to be great. Is Bruce doing well?
Yes, yes, he sounded like good old Bruce. He misses everybody. He misses RPC, but
Sure, we miss him
he's
too.
trying to work part-time. That's kind of hard, right?
Yeah,
No matter where.
exactly.
But he was happy. So we'll see. We may take a small group of singers up there and
When will that
see
be?
how
Do you know?
it's. Yeah, I should know. It's the end of May.
In the May. Okay, because some folks might have. I know some of our folks have places up at Big Canoe, so maybe they might want to pop on over and
Oh,
listen. So make sure and let us know so we can advertise for you. We'd love to
well,
support.
okay.
Look at that.
All right.
Oh,
Look at that right there.
well, Mary. Okay, so I want to kind of journey you. I know a few people who have had kind of as wild of kind of journey and done as many different things as you have done in your life, and including ministry being, professional ministry being one of them. So I want to kind of hear from you. And we'll get up to the present moment. But first, tell me, when you grew up in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
Did you ever think as a little girl that you would eventually be a pastor of a church?
No, 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 no. But now I do have a story of when I was 5 years old. I was interviewed much like this, but like on TV. I think it was still black and white TV back then. But the person that was interviewing me asked, "What did I want to be when I grow up?" And I said, "Well, my mom wants me to be a missionary, but I want to be a majorette." So I, one of those things happened, and guess what? Of course, it was what my mother said, right?
Oh, that's
So it's all
fantastic.
good. But no, I certainly didn't, because I grew up in a church tradition that was very life-giving and wonderful experience, but did not recognize ordination of women. So I didn't grow up with women pastors. So no, that really wasn't in my imagination.
Wow. How did you kind of come to the realization that A, that God was calling you, and B, that it was okay as a woman to be a pastor? I mean, I know for a lot of people that's a really tough transition.
Right. Yeah. It was quite a journey. I I have to say that even though that was the culture in that church tradition, my own family faith experience was very open and respectful of all kinds of people. So that was kind of more in my DNA
Hmm.
from our family. But I'll say that when Bill and I lived in California, Northern California, we went to a evangelical free
Hmm.
church in Oakland, and there was a woman, associate pastor woman, and we just thought the world of her and her teaching. So that was certainly my first time to experience that in a healthy way. But I'll tell you that when we moved to Roswell 24 years ago from Plano, Texas, Dallas area, uh, all three of our kids were born, and we knew that we wanted to be in a church that recognized um, all people and certainly recognized the gifts of young women,
Hmm.
and so that we really we loved the church, but we definitely wanted to be there on behalf of the future of our own children, and as they discerned who God was calling them to be.
Hmm.
Little did I know that I'm going to be first. Ha ha.
That's awesome. Well, it's really cool, Mary. As you're telling the story, I remember in college, I grew up in a similar tradition where women were not encouraged to preach or allowed to really. And I remember in college, I went to this church up on Queen Anne in Seattle, and this woman named Lynn Babb, B-A-A-B, I still remember, she gave this sermon, and I was like, it knocked me over. And I was like, oh my goodness. I just had never, it was just, it not floored me. And so, and since that day, it's like some women are clearly called to preach and to minister. And I've sit at so many, and at your feet, for many years, learning and, about so many things. Okay. So you said 24 years ago you came to RPC?
Could you repeat that? I lost you for just a minute.
Did you say 24 years ago you came to RPC? Wow. When did you start
Yes.
feeling,
Yeah.
when did you start feeling the call to ministry?
Oh, that's a really good question because it was so gradual. I was ordained as an elder and I was on the worship council. And I will tell you, there are just a few snapshots in my memory of when it was like, wow, this is something's up. But I too remember one Sunday, for some reason, all of the pastors had somewhere else they needed to be at the end of the 9:45 service. And I was chair of worship. I was asked to do the benediction all by myself.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of liked being up there, and then to stand there and close out the time of worship with my little arms stretched out and giving a benediction. Like what you said in your sermon, like Eric Little, I felt God's pleasure. It was just a really holy moment. But when I walked, and then I had to greet people at the door like I had given the sermon, and this is probably 2003.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this precious senior woman, don't even remember who it was. And I knew most people then, but she said, "Oh, honey, you're such a good minister." And I said, "Well, I'm not a minister." And she said, "You will be." So I
Wow.
was like, okay, I'm listening to that. Another interesting thing was, am I answering? I don't even remember what the question was, but let's keep going
Yeah,
with this
this
for a
is
minute,
great.
because the Life Keys Bible study curriculum that RPC has done for many years, when that first came into the church office, it was delivered to Diane Dwayne and me because we were going to do a women's retreat in South Carolina. That's a whole nother story. And we were like, what did we agree to do? We don't know what we're doing. But anyway, so we used this brand new Life Keys curriculum for this retreat, and it was so interesting. And then finally, I took Life Keys for myself after teaching it, and that really helped me to see through different lens how I'm shaped.
Mm-hmm.
What gifts do I have? And that was another big part of it.
Wow.
And Lane Alderman just encouraging me. I remember him, in that very office where you are, saying, what about seminary? And I said, I could never go to seminary. Maybe I'll take a class, but I have 3 kids, and one in elementary, one in middle school, and one in high school. I could never go full time. And he said, never say never.
Wow.
Another person who spoke truth into my life.
That's awesome, Mary. One of the great things in these conversations, I think it was really evident in Lindsay's, in Carrie's, in Brad's, and now and Emily writes too. Just you guys carrying on Lane's legacy in such a powerful way. Like his recognition of your gifts for ministry and drawing that out, and now you guys carrying on his legacy, I think is really remarkable. How long did you spend in seminary?
Well, it took me 4 years full time. No, of course not. I didn't start full time, remember, but 4 years, but year round, summers.
Yep.
You name it.
Yep. And I think you claim not to remember me, but I remember you as the really fun, sprightly young, more mature student, with, and I would say with more life experience. You know, when you're a 23 or 24-year-old, you don't really know anything, and you and then you're expected to go into the world to minister to folks that are living with problems, issues, situation, context that you don't have. And I think your gift of having a lot of that experience really helped prepare you for ministry. Did you think that? Did you feel that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Starting seminary at, well, finishing at age 50 was, definitely had its pluses, but in a way it was like starting all over. Seminary it's quite the place it's not about sitting around having Bible studies and eating s'mores. A lot of deconstruction to be able to, to build back how to talk through things. I remember theology about drove me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was the organizing pastor at a new church plant, I was able to talk about theology in very basic words. And I probably used that class almost more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
you bring up church planting and your kind of passion for church planting. Where did your passion come from to church plant?
Right. It kind of does go back to my seminary experience where I kind of felt like I didn't belong. I was not, I mean, I like to study, but I was pretty quiet in class. I was like, I don't even know. These people are so smart. I don't know what's going on here. But I accidentally took a class called Frontiers of something, and it was about new church planting, new churches, new church development, and I was like, oh, this is why I'm weird.
Uh-huh.
I love starting things
Hmm.
and doing things, and I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur at mind and heart, and so to be able to gather through just looking around a community and totally seeing that God is already at work. It's not me saying, hello, here's the good news. You haven't heard it before, but here I have it. It's,
Yeah.
nothing like that. But that it just was, somebody who enjoys taking risks. I mean, I don't know why, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
Not crazy life-threatening risks, but there's that element of spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
It just fit ministry-wise. So that was about a little more than halfway through seminary experience, and then good old Richard Hill. Doesn't everybody have Richard Hill in their story? Richard knew the executive presbytery in Utah somehow, and knew that there was a church plant in Nevada, which is next to Utah, but
Yep.
Still they were involved in, and it was an area that we loved. We loved the West, and Bill was was connected with the people at Zion National Park, and so we just went out there and visited with those 25 people who had begun to gather and worship,
Wow.
and that was 2 years, just two really quick years before I was called to RPC on staff.
Right. And so it was 2 years, and then you came, and then how long did you serve on the RPC staff?
8 years.
Okay. I think your gifts were really helpful for me when I came on, and I'm sure for Lane as well, but when I came to RPC, and your wisdom kind of as we were trying to figure out what to do with the mustard seed project, and I mean, church planting is just so important. How are you still involved in church planting?
I am in the Coaches Network and the 1001 New Worshiping Communities out of the PCUSA Mission Agency.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should know that. But there's a network of churches of coaches that work with church planters, and I'm just wrapping up a 2-year coaching relationship with someone that I went to seminary with,
Oh.
and and up and she's in the St. Louis area. So that's been really, really fun.
That's really great.
So that's a new experience. Coaching is not, that's a whole different situation. You know, the coach is not the authority. The coach is one who asks questions and
Mm-hmm. Oh,
draws things out.
I bet you're very
Just
good
like
at
your
it.
coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks.
Oh, well, okay. So, okay, you retired at a really strange time in terms of like you retired. It's like you want to travel the world. It's like, no, you're going to quarantine and stay at home for a year.
Right.
What have you been up
Right.
to since you've been retired?
Well, of course, the the COVID pandemic and all the pandemics that we are now waking up to or being exposed to are affecting everything, and we're no different, of course, in retirement. You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry. Sorry. Don't let me
I
distract you.
know, I'm already choking you up.
Yeah.
However, we we have found ways to do some traveling. Bill retired just a few months after I did, but we've done like other people have done. We've stayed home. We've um, not everybody's done this, but we built an outdoor room and have have really taken advantage of being home,
Mhm.
being together, trying to stay safe. But
Yeah.
but we have our pod of friends and families that we feel safe. We kind of have the same routines and
Mhm.
have been able to spend some time with people. We've done Zoom calls with my family for a while. We even have a new group text called Family Gamers, and that's so it's really developed into my broader family being connected. So that's been a really good thing about it.
That's good.
What I would say one of the huge benefits has been to have a yoga community online. Diane Dwayne and Almost Home Yoga has just been such an important part of my routine, and I'm really learning to take care of myself in body and mind and spirit. So that's been a big thing. And you said you were interested in people who you would want to have on on another interview. So I know you've interviewed Diane before, but I recommend it again.
Yeah, Mary, that I'm really glad you highlighted Diane's ministry because I think right in the first week or two when we kind of saw what was unfolding with the pandemic and kind of as I looked into the future, I was like, this is going to be a real spiritual crisis for a lot of folks with a lot of anxiety and stress, and people need a lot of times people I think just push that down, but in a pandemic that stuff's going to bubble up to the surface in families, in work. And I was like, Diane's ministry of centering, finding your spiritual center, finding peace, rising above kind of the current circumstances was so important. And I know so I'm really glad that you're taking advantage of her ministry because you can just do it from home via Zoom, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it could not be any more convenient. And I mean, you even have the option to turn your video off and
Yeah.
like I'm just going to do this in my own world. But that, and now to have this community of people that are across the country
Mm-hmm.
also, we just, and there's something about being on the mat and being in your yoga clothes and got your hair up in a bun, it doesn't matter,
Okay.
those kind of things.
Well, I'm really glad you said it. And so you can turn off your video if you want. Because I was talking to a guy on Monday who was like, I really would thinking maybe I should do some yoga, for health and spiritual wellness. And I was like, do Diane Dwayne's. And he's like, well, I'm kind of embarrassed. And I said, turn off your video camera. This is a
Good.
no-brainer. You don't have to leave your
Yeah.
house. You don't have to go to a fancy yoga studio. You can just do it. So I really thank you for highlighting that. That's an important ministry. Now, I also know you've been busy on Zoom with one of our favorite Kenyans. Talk a little bit about your friendship with Zablin and some of that ministry that's happening still.
Yes, I for you and others who know Zablon, you know that he's in your life forever. And thankfully, really
Absolutely.
thankfully so. I do want to take just a minute to say how grateful I am to still feel very close to Pam Munoz in Guatemala and to Severo Ek in Mexico,
Mm.
and people who live in a different part of the world who love the work of God, just continue to still mean so much to me and to RPC. So I'm really thankful for that. Uh, However, we are in meeting with Zablon every week on Zoom. Those of us who traveled to Kenya over the past, I don't know, I'd say 4 or 5 years, have have been able to see a new vision that Zablon has, and it's a what I love about this, and the reason why we're like, yep, let's talk about this every week, is that RPC and other churches have been supporting orphans and other at-risk children in primary and secondary school for 15 years.
Wow.
But now these kids are graduating, and how are they going to be launched into being contributing citizens, as we all want our kids to
Mm-hmm.
be? So there's so this is a new vision to develop scholarships for these students, the aspiring students, and not just from the Tumaini mission home, but also from at-risk communities. And so that while that is the vision, another thing that I think is so great is that this is going to be funded through an income generating business. We've seen that model there in Kenya work at the Tumaini Mission Conference Center. And now Rockbridge Ministries operating is funded through the water project. So it's not a new model, but it's a sustaining model.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking Zablon's vision that we really believe is inspired by God, and beginning to share that with other people who are connected with Rockbridge
Well,
and have a history. While he cannot travel,
right.
I just have to pretend like I'm kind of a little Zablon.
Well, those are big
Yeah.
shoes to fill, that's for sure, because he is one of the more impressive fundraisers and innovators in mission and ministry that I've ever seen. I mean, so thank you for all your work that you continue. It's just cool that you can retire and you're still doing basically the work of ministry, raising money, trying to help people, make a difference for folks that are vulnerable. And the pandemic has only made those people more vulnerable. So I really appreciate that ministry. And we're going to be hearing more about that in the coming days. You know, we just had the mission auction, raised a ton of
Yes,
money.
congratulations.
We've had
Well done.
just had some generous folks. And Dan Kreis is, you know, our new missions outreach pastor, is following
Yeah.
in your steps, and your guys' kind of connections, you know, just really, really cool. And what a blessing to have you here to kind of tell the history and you know, the how RPC has built these friendships and partnerships over so many years. But before we go, you know, I've been selling you as an expert in the scholarship of the book of Revelation.
Yeah, that I don't know where that came from.
Well, you sent me
Maybe
your
I'm the
notes.
only person who has tried to even open the book, but
Well, you'd have really helped me a lot in it. I mean, I've been very intimidated by Revelation and over the years for a lot of, because I've just seen it misused so often.
yes.
So, like, if you had to give us a thumbnail sketch, what is the book of Revelation to you?
Well, this could be a roundabout answer,
Mm-hmm.
which I think would be okay.
Yep.
Then I really want to hear what you have to say to that same question. Let's not forget that. Um, I too was very intimidated. I mean, scared by the Book of Revelation for years, and I had read that series, multi-book series back in the 80s and 90s that was so popular, and that formulated what I thought that the Revelation was about. But back to when I was a church planter out west, sometimes feeling all alone. Eugene Peterson was who I bought every book he wrote, and I read every book he wrote, and one of his books was the book that on Revelation, his word for word commentary. That's it.
Reverse
That's
Thunder. Fantastic.
Reverse Thunder, that actually had the words reversed. I don't know. To me.
It is. It's something weird with Facebook.
It's not written that way. That's for sure. But to begin to read the Revelation through Eugene Peterson's eyes and his imagination was it just woke me up. Mm-hmm. And so I really do appreciate you having that book. I saw that book on your shelf, the minute you moved in, the 4 million books that you have, and how I could spot that one, I don't know, but except that it is one of my favorites. So what I love is it really is how he has interpreted it, but mm-hmm. but it has woken me to think about it. It's at the end of the Bible, because it's retelling the biblical story in bright colors, and it makes me think that that the Spirit was saying, look, even back then, look, church people, mm-hmm. you think you know these stories? Oh no, mm-hmm. We're just scratching the surface here. Let me wake you up mm-hmm. to different levels of what was happening in the nativity, mm-hmm. There's so much more, and what a good word that is today. Mm-hmm. That I think I know these biblical stories. I think I know the life of Jesus. Mm-hmm. No, there's so much more. So it's wild, and it's wonderful, and as the vision, the revelation, the unveiling gets to a certain place where it's like, I cannot take this anymore. It's too bloody. Yep. It's too graphic. Mm-hmm. And then here comes like a measurement, mm-hmm. Or a numbering of how many are in the assembly, and numbers and measures ground us. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just fun. It's crazy to say that. Right. So what about you? Like, what's your experience with the Revelation?
Well, I think so. I love your description. It's the retelling, kind of in bright colors, of the biblical story. I think that's, if I had to summarize, I would quote you and say that. But I also think it's engaging parts of our mind and emotions that just narrative doesn't get across. And so that's what apocalyptic does. It speaks to our souls if we're willing to have the eyes to see, the ears to hear. And I think that's like I was drawing on music a couple weeks ago, how music speaks to us. And that was my big revelation, reading Revelation, was how much singing is in the book. And then this past week about poetry. And I think, in the West, in the modern West, we think of the spiritual world here and the material world here, and the two never meet. It's really hard for us to kind of think about it, but Revelation really wants to show them as interlocking, and the spiritual world and material world. And that's what I've been thinking for this Sunday, is how do we have spiritual eyes to see a world that's not physical, and we're so materialistic, and by that I mean not just over consumers, but just concerned with the material world. And how do we see God's presence in the interlocking nature of it? So that's kind of what I've been wrestling with, and it's just such a fun, wild book. I don't know if I need to spend months in it, but I think the 6 weeks is really been fun, and I think the congregation has responded, I think. So I really appreciate you and all you've done in helping me in particular, and RPC especially. So Well, Mary, I'm looking at the time. Thank you so much for closing the distance with us this Wednesday. Um, it's been fun to catch
Great
up.
to be
I
with
look
you.
I look forward to seeing you in person soon, you and Bill. And yeah, I just when if I ever retire, I want to retire like you. Like I want to stay busy. I want to still make a difference, and but occasionally travel when I can. So anyway, Mary, thank you so much. We celebrate you,
Thanks.
and we'll close the distance again next Wednesday. Be tuned for finding out who our guest is. Thanks, Mary.
Take care.
All
Bye,
right.
all.
Bye bye.